And as we've reported on Tuesday yesterday, the president did sign into law the Hong Kong Autonomy Act, which would impose sanctions on banks doing business with Chinese officials who've been cracking down on Hong Kong and their protests for independence. However, the president is now ruling out additional sanctions on top Chinese officials for now, according to reports, in order to not further escalate tensions with Beijing. Now, all of this, of course, as he still puts the coronavirus solely on the shoulders of China. For more on this, I want to bring in Florida Congressman Greg Steube. Congressman, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
All right, good to see you. Now, you've introduced the Chinese government COVID-19 Accountability Act to hold China financially responsible for the pandemic. The president is reportedly pumping the brakes on Chinese sanctions when it comes to Hong Kong's autonomy, but when it comes to COVID, you say turn up the heat. Tell us about this bill proposal.
Yeah, absolutely. We know now it's very fair to say that the Chinese Communist Party knew about the information and the accountability and the type of things of transmitting the disease person to person. They misled Americans. They misled the world. The WHO misled the world as it relates to COVID-19. They could have stopped it on their shores in China. They let millions of Chinese travel all across the world, infecting hundreds of thousands of people all across the world, all because they didn't want the world to know how deadly this disease was and how transmittable this disease was. So they should be held financially accountable for that. The bill that I have authored allows the president to negotiate with the Chinese Communist Party to come to some type of settlement of the economic and financial impact that we have had here in the United States.
Well, the president did say this week, and you may have heard, he said he's not interested in speaking with President Xi Jinping right now regarding trade. The Phase 2 trade deal, by all accounts, seems out of reach for now, at least more now than ever. So does that hinder your efforts in urging the Trump administration to negotiate and reach some sort of reimbursement from China?
I don't think it does. I think more and more Americans have seen how divisive and how destructive the Chinese Communist Party has been as it relates to COVID-19. Floridians remember not very well about 10 years ago when we dealt with the Chinese drywall issue, where many people lost their homes and many people got sick from the drywall that came from China. So I absolutely think that there should be movement on this. And I think at some point you'll see more and more Americans come around to the fact that China needs to be held accountable for their lack of action as it relates to COVID-19.
Have you heard anything from the White House on this? Any response from the White House yet?
We have not heard anything from the White House yet.
Okay. Now, your state of Florida has now topped 300,000 COVID cases. The state just reported a record single-day death toll of 132 deaths. The unrelenting question that must be asked, and I think we've gone over this before when I've spoken to you in the past, are you still, at this point, are you confident where this could be headed with regards to available ICU beds and ventilators, et cetera, in Florida?
I was just in an emergency operations center today getting briefed by our Department of Health official there in Charlotte County today. And the rate at which people are getting infected is only at about 6% in Charlotte County. That's a very good number. That's very plateaued to numbers that we've seen in the last month or so here in Florida. So that's good news for Floridians. And it also is a lower demographic of people. He said in Charlotte County that the people that are testing positive are much younger. Those much younger people are obviously not the ones dying or getting admitted to ICUs or getting ventilators put in them. So that's a good thing that is happening here in Florida. Obviously, we don't want anybody to get sick, and we always encourage people to follow the CDC guidelines. But it's a younger demographic of people that are getting it, and those people are obviously not the ones that are taking up ICU space. Most of our hospitals are still good on ventilators. They're still good on ICU space and hospital space.
A couple more on this, Congressman. Governor Ron DeSantis there in Florida he agreed with what you just said. He says the number one demographic being affected right now is the age group of 25 to 34. Critics said, or have said, some in the mainstream media, that Florida opened too quickly. But the CDC is saying that it's not that Florida opened too quickly. They're saying it's vacationers from the north who may be to blame. Coming south into Florida, they may be to blame for this spike. Do you agree with that?
Well, and what about the protests of tens of thousands of people in major cities all across this country that were protesting in tight quarters, violating CDC guidelines of mask wearing and all those sorts of things? And that's that younger demographic of people. Of course, the left-wing media and the mass media is going to criticize a Republican governor for trying to reopen our economy here in Florida. I support the reopening plan that the governor has in place. Private businesses can put certain parameters in place. You heard today Walmart instituted a face mask policy. They're a private business. They can choose to do that. And as private businesses take steps to protect their patrons and protect their workers, I think you're going to see that reopening the economy was the good thing to do. We can't stay closed down the United States into perpetuity just to keep these COVID cases down.
Well, you live in one of the biggest vacation spots in the world, definitely in the country. Do you have a message for all of those many, many, many people who are coming down from the colder parts of the country into Florida?
Yeah, if you're sick or you have a temperature or you have symptoms, obviously self-quarantine when you get here. Do the type of things that you should be doing following CDC guidelines. Don't go out in a big party on the beach with hundreds and hundreds of people that are also coming from different locations. If everybody just follows the CDC guidelines and does what is smart and takes some personal responsibility, I think you're going to see those numbers go back down.
All right. Congressman Greg Steube of Florida, thank you so much for your time as always.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube, and call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.